How's everybody doing tonight? I just thought I would go live real quick. Just checking on my sound, see how's everything rolling. Check one, check two. So you see the executive order on improving national cybersecurity that was signed by President Joe Biden. Seems like in response to the colon oil issue. So let's just talk about it a little bit. So I'm gonna read a quick article, then we're gonna start breaking it down. I actually got the executive order itself, and we'll actually start going through that. Let me check on, make sure we're live. Check on. Okay, there we are. Okay, let me cut that. Sounds pretty good. Let me check my stream health. But once again, there it is, executive order on improving national cybersecurity. Since it was kind of a bad week for the country, there's been like a hack every week. So obviously, so let's break down the article. How you doing, Joyce? I want to welcome you. So we're gonna break it down. Joe Biden's executive order. We're gonna read a couple articles. If you got any questions, just shoot them anytime. So let's do this super quick article. President Biden has issued a long-awaited executive order designed to improve supply chain security, incident detection, and response for overall resilience to threats. Right, supply chains, oil companies, electric companies, SolarWinds. So a lot of companies are actually checking on their security, but when you start using other people's software and integrates it into the company and what you're doing, right, you you have to review that and make sure that's on the same level of security that your company's using. So I think that's the thing people were missing a lot of is you have to review everything, because if you look back, I want to say 5 years ago, casino got hacked through their fish tank. Their fish tank was connected to the internet to look at saltwater fish, and somebody actually got on their network through actually the saltwater fish tank. So we must review all software. Although every president in recent year has issued an order to improve the national cybersecurity, experts believe one is more detailed and has better chance of success than the previous. It also comes amidst the unprecedented attacks on U.S. government critical infrastructure in the form of, like we talked about, SolarWinds, Exchange Server, and the Colonial Pipeline attack, to just name a few. So like we just talked about, it's just been a ton of attacks time after time. So I think not just the United States, but every country on the planet is trying to lock down their security, because there's not many countries on the planet that can actually go toe to toe with the United States Army, Navy, Marines, that whole service thing. But if you get three nerds on a computer, you can take down a whole oil company, right? They just paid them $5 million in Bitcoin. So I think that's what smaller countries are doing. They're actually getting their cyber detail up. So among the key measures and requirement for all federal government software suppliers to meet strict rules on cybersecurity or risk being blacklisted. Eventually, the plan is to create an Energy Star label so both government and public buyers can quickly and easily see whether the software was developed securely. So if I work in the government sector, they've been doing that for the last decade. They got NIST, HIPAA, OSHA. They got so many government security compliances, and we're still not getting it right. So I mean, that sounds cool, but what does that actually mean? What's up, Valentino? I'm glad you could make it. So what does that mean really when they say, you got to review this? And two is people don't realize the Colonial Pipeline attack, that's a private company. So how much government regulation can you put on a private company? So how does that work? Other measures include aircraft investigation style cybersecurity review board, which will make recommendations to approve any major incident and a standardized playbook for government incident response. The EO also mandated drive to secure cloud service, zero trust, including multi-factor authentication, data encryption at rest, and then treasuring by default. Once again, I work in bingo, Joyce. Give us a break. It sounds good. Once again, I work in the government, so I've been doing that for a decade. I worked at DoD for 11 years, and I work for a huge state entity. So I've been doing that probably for the last seriously 20 years. So cloud services. If you go out there and Google stuff, if you don't configure Google Cloud or Amazon's Cloud or Azure, Microsoft Cloud, you can still configure that wrong and get your stuff hacked. Right? So just because you're in the cloud doesn't mean you're secure. They also provision for government wide endpoint detection, response EDR, improve information sharing within the government between public and private sectors, invent logging requirements for federal government departments to enhance investigation and remediation. So yeah, that's one thing people are not doing is to be able to find out if you hack or to figure out what happened, you got to make sure your logs are logging the proper thing. So what does that mean? What are you logging? Log on, log off, incidents, quick interruptions. So what are you putting in your logs, and how do you make that standardized? If you worked in the government, you know what's up. I know what's up. Like I said, I've been doing this seriously. I've been in the government space for 20 years. Like I said, I worked in DoD for 11, and I've been at a large state client, and we actually have government requirements. So I actually been in 19 years. So I've just been blessed to be getting that government work as a contractor. I'm trying to ride it till the wheels fall out. The executive order has been welcomed by security experts. The executive order is right here. We're going to go over that in a little more detail, not extraneous detail. We're going to hit it at a high level and just get the highlights. Some highlights we're going to talk about is what is the government pushing? What do I think? Which I think be obviously you want to be in the cloud. The government's pushing to the cloud. So we talked about you got to get your cloud skills up so you can get that cloud bag, right? So you need to get your Azure and your Amazon skills up, because obviously if the government's going to there, all the big players are going to be in the cloud. So you need to get your cloud skills up. Brian Fox, CTO Sonatype, argued that it would require suppliers and software companies in general to be more accountable for what's in their code. That's a good. It's actually called Purple Team. There's a hashtag Purple Team, and that's application security code. So how do you configure your application to make sure it's secure? How do you make sure your application is secure? How do you lock that down, right? And I got a couple videos I'll probably share them. I think it's 300 checks for application side of your code. So we'll probably talk a little bit about that. While it shouldn't have taken a government intervention for business to practice proper software hygiene, Biden is harnessing the purchase power of federal government to advance software. This is something our nations would benefit from. Andrew, CEO of Illumina, praised the focus on best practice of zero trust model for securing distributed computer system. Zero trust has been in this for a decade. So if zero trust was the solution, it would have been already working by now. The Biden administration has unfurled a sweeping executive order, finally acknowledging the failing of outdated federal cybersecurity models, laying bare the first iteration of a new security design founded in the zero trust, he argued. Cyber complacency isn't just an American problem or a federal problem or a policy problem. It's a global problem. That's why I welcome the executive order with open arms. It's a call to action to the world. We need to change the way we protect ourselves. With this new executive order, the new zero trust blueprint, we're on a path to a more secure future. That is false. The reason why I said that's false is we've been talking about locking down internet and companies for the last decade. And two is our adversaries are getting more sophisticated, right? So when you got PhD students, half of them were actually trained in the United States that are actually attacking us. So how are we going to do it? Welcome your regular angry IT guy. Joe Biden order is going to fix it all. Facts. It's going to fix it all. So what he's really going to do is line the pockets of big companies. So anything, new software come, the new buzzword, it's got to be zero trust, it's got to be in the cloud, and you got to have multi-factor authentication. Like, right? So let's look at the executive order itself. Like I said, we're just going to hit the hot parts. It's like 4 big sections. Once again, I did a couple small videos talking about zero trust and how to do it in Amazon. If any of you programmers, we're talking about using containers, probably using, my favorite one is Docker. I'm a Java guy. So how do you set that up with zero trust? Zero trust is it's called micro-segmentation. So every VM needs a firewall. So if you're using Windows or Linux or Ubuntu, they have built-in firewalls. There's a Windows firewalls that come with Windows. Then there's it's called IP tables if you're using Linux, right? So every VM has its own firewall, and it's called that micro-segmentation. So if a hacker gets on one VM, he will not be able to move to other VMs freely, right? So that's one of the things. Agile zero trust blockchain immediately. I'm with you, regular angry IT guy. The only thing I flinch about blockchain is it's not 10 years old, so I don't think we really understand the ramifications of trying to scale it up. Right? We use blockchain usually for Bitcoin and money, but when you put that in an application at speed, I've never ran any performance testers on it. I'm with you. I see you. You're regular angry IT guy. I'm just throwing it out, but you're right. It's a buzzword to suit. Like I said, I roll up my sleeves and get dirty. So, and actually, if you go to Amazon, you can actually spin up a blockchain. They actually have a blockchain database out there. I was playing a little bit with Java, so I was going to try to run 1 million records through it in a minute and see how it would handle it, how it would scale at that particular size. So I'm one of those guys. I do this for real, man. Like I tell everybody, I want all the smoke. I'm about this cybersecurity life. So that's what we're gonna get into tonight. So like I said, when you say blockchain, I'm realistic. I'm like, okay, how do we scale it? How do we program it? What package do we use? Is that big data, small data, speed, microservices? Like you said, regular IT guy, it's a buzzwords of soup, and it's a ton of ways to do it. If you haven't seen any of my background is I've done everything in this business. I've been in the game for 30 years. I started out a programmer for 15 years. I've been a DBA, web server admin, app server admin, Linux admin. The only thing I've never really done is Cisco networking. Anything besides networking, I probably actually got my hands dirty. I was an Oracle guy for 15 years. I'm a huge Oracle database, but that's almost like saying mainframe now, isn't that big word? So let's see some more of this this saving document. The executive order improving the nation's cybersecurity. This is actually the order itself, so let's chop it up. Okay, one big section is policy. Like I said, we're just going to read a couple paragraphs and chop it up. The United States face persisting and increasing software malicious cyber campaigns and threaten the public sector, private sector, and ultimately the people's security and privacy. It's a little more than that. You can actually get life and death. There was a hospital in Ireland that actually got ransomware. They could actually not take patients in. So if you get ransomware in a hospital, you have to be in there. Your stuff might be shut down because we want to put everything on the internet. So if your vital signs might not get in there, so I think it's almost getting close to life or death. If you're actually in the airplane and the airport radar gets ransomware in there and they cannot read your radar and you stuck in the air, how's that going to look like? So, yes, Joyce, I've been in the game for a long time. Like I said, I've done a little bit of everything. So that's one reason I came to YouTube. I want to talk about security as more of a program. You know, like shout out to my man, Keep It Techie. He's a Linux guy. He really focuses on Linux and a few things. Tech G, he's a little more. He's doing getting people in. When you do cybersecurity at a policy level, we're going to talk about in the future policies and procedures, programming, application security, database security. Then when you put checks on all those things, you're putting a check on your whole system. Right, you're only strong as your weakest link. So we're going to talk about security as a program. How do I lock it down and make sure my small company is locked down? So everything needs to be locked down, right? web server, app server, database, your networking. You gotta have policies and procedures to tell your employees what to expect from your security, what they can and cannot do on your corporate laptop, right? So those are some things we're going to talk about. Today we're going to talk about at the policy level. We're going to dig in at the highest level because this is going to trickle down like I said, to the vendors. What they're going to do, everything's going to be zero trust, everything's going to be micro segmentation. Then we're going to talk in the future, what does that really mean when you roll your sleeves up and get dirty? So let's talk about the politics. Once again, cyber campaign threatening the public sector, private sector, ultimately the American people's security. The federal government must approve efforts to identify, deter, protect against, detect, and respond to these action and actors. I'm going to read that last line. Respond to these action and actors. So the question is, what would make America actually go to war from cyber? So if somebody locks down our oil or shuts down our electric grid, what would make the United States put boots on the ground? Right? There's a line, and I'm trying to figure it out right. So if Russia shuts down our electric grid and we couldn't do finance for a month, would we actually send missiles and troops to Russia? I need everybody to comment in the chat box what they think that will. I think if we got our China shuts down our electric grid, we're going to war. We're putting boots on the ground. So what does that mean? Oh yeah, it'll be automatically uploaded later. And Valentina, put any questions in there. I'll respond to your questions in the comment sections. Enjoy your dinner, buddy. So what would that really do, right? And two is I think that woke people up. What's up, Kenny Conjo? Just reading Joe Biden's executive order. That's gonna save us, Kenny Conjo. That's gonna make everything better. The executive order. So what would make America go to war? If Russia shuts down our electric grid, I think we would go to war. Boots on the ground, right? There's a place where, hey, your cyber's better than us, but we gonna punch you in the mouth. We got real missiles and real troops. So what is that, right? So incremental improvement would not give us security. We need, instead of the federal government needs to make bold changes and significant investments in order to attend a vital institution underpinnings for the American way of life. So I mean that's a good buzzwords, but what does that mean? Because you got to remember is a lot of these systems are old. A lot of these systems we've been trying to upgrade for the last 20 years. So even if it comes down with $10 trillion, you got to migrate it, you got to test it, and you got to run it. Right? So do we have the capacity to do that? Especially if you're a mid-sized company like the oil company. People don't realize is that's a public-private partnership. Right? So the government really doesn't dictate to them how they run their computer system. I think they dictate how they should run their oil pipelines. I think they go out and review those and do assessments on their oil pipelines. But I don't think they were actually going in and looking at their computer system to say, this is how you secure a computer system. Because I looked in there in the first line in there, and I'm going to put that article in the description. It said they're responsible for the first line of their computer system. Right? So the government's like, that's your problem, not our problem. Right? But when there's no oil, it becomes what? The government's problem. Right? Oh, I work with a ton of old systems. So where I work at now, we're actually upgrading finally upgrading one of our large systems. So it took forever to get it in. It's a 6-year migration. So I mean, it's taken us 6 years, and the system we had wasn't that old, but it was kind of outdated. So it's taken us 6 years to migrate off a state system until we call it a modernization. So even though he's saying that and the system we're doing is, I came from DOD, I think the one we're doing now is small. So if you're doing a major system, I work with guys from Deloitte, Booz Allen, Microsoft. They work on 10-year plans. So even if we get all this money, it's not going to be like, poof, we're secure. Right? So this, where we at right now is at least going to go on for 3 years. It's the policy of the administration for the prevention, detection, assessment, And remediation of cyber incidents is a top priority and essential to the national economic security. So for me, the big thing there is an assessment. That's kind of what I do for my job is I look at machines. We have a federal thing called NIST 800-53, and they have a small system is going to have probably 5,000 checks on it. So we assess those systems to figure out where they're at. So just assess one of those systems, right? It's going to take you a minute. Shout out to CL in the chat. He's an upcoming cyber guy, future CISO on the planet. So I see you. I see you. So from a perspective of that, so what does that mean for cybersecurity? There's going to be a lot of jobs, a lot of migrations, and a lot of architecture that needs to go down, right? So I'm learning that. I'm getting comfortable with Amazon. Their networking is called VPC. They have a ton of configurations in there. So what does that mean? CIDR, how do you do subnets? How do you do VLANs? How do you do Windows firewalls? How do you do Linux firewalls? All that's going to control the movement of your networking, right? So when we get down there, that's actually called zero trust networking, right? You're controlling your network, who can go where people can go, and how they can go, right? So since we're talking about the cloud, I'm, like I said, been studying up on my AWS, so we throw some of those in there, right? So this saying is at the top, the government, which we already knew, needs more cybersecurity people, right? So how do we get in that business? How do we get the bag? How do we get in management positions, right? Shout out to Kenny Conjo, one of the top penetration testers. I see him in there doing big things. So some of the guys I roll with. So like I said, how do we take advantage of that? Like we said, degrees or certifications. Get that AWS practitioner. Get that AWS associate architect. Get that AWS networking. Get that Azure networking. Right? Those are the two big 800-pound gorillas. Right? Don't nobody owe us nothing, and ain't nobody gonna give us nothing. So we gotta go study, get it, and make it happen. All right, let's get them certs. So let's get the bag. So section 2, removing barriers to sharing threat information. So in the government, if you get hacked, Department of Homeland Security, you're supposed to send your hack information to Homeland Security. Why would you send your hack information in Homeland Security? So if Homeland Security sees 4 agencies from 4 different states getting hacked, they believe that could be a nation state hack, right? China could be attacking the whole United States. So that's why the government wants you to send your hack information to Homeland Security. That way they can figure out, okay, is this a one-off or we getting attacked as a nation and what should we do, right? But the weird part of that, and I actually had a discussion with some of my bosses, is I don't like to share my dirty laundry with agencies I'm not, accustomed to, right? I want to keep my hack to myself, right? So we discussed that in big meetings, but for the whole good of the nation, I think all companies and all agencies should send those actually to Homeland Security, because now there's so many hacks every week, so many hacks every day. Like I said, they're trying to look out to make sure we're not being attacked by a nation state. So the question is, if we get attacked by a nation state, what are we going to do? That's an excellent question. But so that's the reason why, if you hear that, that's that line right there. Remove barriers to sharing threat information, right? So we want to send it to Homeland Security, and they're going to let everybody know. So let's read a couple paragraphs in here to see where we at. The federal government contracts IT and OT service providers to conduct an array of day-to-day functions within the Federal Information Service. The service providers include cloud service providers having unique access and insight into cyber threats and incidents, information on a federal information system. So the cool thing is, when you go to the cloud, being Azure, Amazon, or Google, I'm going to throw Google in there. That's the big 3 is they have a ton of security people. I actually been on the phone with Amazon and Azure security people because I was doing an assessment on the system in there. They got 1,000 security guys. So if you're a small, medium-sized company, those guys got, especially Amazon. I'm super impressed with those guys. They had a ton of security people. I sent a question. They got back with me ASAP. So when you go to cloud, that is a great feature of being in the cloud. You get instant security, I believe, at a very good price because obviously they're scaling it out, and obviously if they're doing it for the federal government, if you got a small company, right, they can easily scale for you. They probably done that type of security, and they actually have templates for you when you spin stuff up. At the same time, current contract terms and restrictions may limit the sharing of such threat incident information with executive department and agencies. They are responsible for investigating and remediating cyber incidents. So once again, cyber incidents. So at DoD, if you believe you had an incident, you had 24 hours to let the Homeland Security know. They want to know if you think you've been hacked, not if you've been hacked. Because, like I said, if they get 5 or 6 people thinking they've been hacked, it's a nation state. So they give you a requirement of what that looks like, right? When you've been hacked, and how do you do it, and like what's the form you should be doing. One of the bad things is when you talk about it's multiple agencies: Cyber Infrastructure and Security Agency, CISA, FBI, other intelligence agencies, IC, NSA. Depending on what area you're in, you got to deal with a ton of agencies. So this is a requirement within 60 days of the date of this order. Director of OMB and consulting with the Secretary of Defense, they want to make it activated. Things you could do is, and we kind of do this, is all security language should be in your contract language. So any contract we do with software, we got security language in there, right? So you got to agree to us assessment. If you think you've been hacked and you're my vendor, you got 24 hours to let us know, right? So in your contract, you need to have communications between what you expect from your HVAC company, what you expect for your heating, your cooling company, what you expect, like we talked about. The casino got hacked to a salt water company, right? If they're on their network, you need to have security language in all your contracts, right? So that's sharing. Once again, collaborative federal cyber, that's reporting to a Homeland Security. Let's see. So I read it, so I'm just kind of going over it at a high level. The nature of cyber incident reporting, types of information regarding cyber incidents, the appropriate effectiveness of your civil liberties, the time period in which the contract must be executed, and reporting requirements. So one thing that jumped out at me to me is they said if you're on the network, the government network, and the way they're writing it is, it sounds like if you're on a part of Azure or Amazon and it's a government network, the government can actually go into your network and patch your system, or actually shut down your system if they think it's a national security incident. So there was actually an attack where Russia left some web shells in about 500 companies' sites. The government actually went out there and patched those sites and didn't tell the company that they were actually removing those web shells and they're patching those sites. Joyce, the reason why they patched those sites is they believe it was a national security. They believe all those companies were leaking so much personal information the United States population didn't know, so they thought it was their duty to go actually in and hack it. I did a video, I'll link that to the top. I thought that was an overreach for the United States to go out and patch private companies' websites. I thought they should notify the company, but I didn't think they should patch it. A lot of people disagree. One of my bosses, and I'm going to interview him, he's an ex-NSA agent. He thought it was national security. Once again, he thought they were bleeding too much information. So we were actually debating that task. So the government, I think, is actually starting to put it in stuff like this, so you won't be surprised when they actually start doing it a little more aggressively in the future. Next section is modernization and federal government cybersecurity. Once again, modernization actually is a strong word. Like I said, a lot of systems out there are old. A lot of systems out there are costly. We all know nothing's free. The tax money, the money they're spending is our tax money that we're giving it. So we have to figure that out. Uh, One thing about me, Joyce, is I always give my opinion. People might not like it, and I always tell people we can always respectively disagree. But you're right. I think people are stepping on our liberties. I always tell people free speech is not free, right? So there's a cost to that. So to keep pace with the dynamic and increasing sophisticated cyber threat environment, the federal government must make decisions and steps to modernize its approach to cybersecurity, including the increased federal government's visibility into threats while protecting privacy and civil liberties. That's what Joyce just brought up. The federal government must adopt security best practices and advance towards zero trust architecture, accelerated its movements to the cloud, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, and platform as a service. So for me, that was actually a weird statement in this document because 9 times out of 10, the government doesn't tell you what technology or even framework to use to secure something. They say secure it. So here they're pretty vehemently about using zero trust architecture. Then once again, being in the cloud, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service. So that's for me really weird to government to be that telling you that detailed account of what they want you to use as from as security and even like I said, zero trust. They don't tell you the architecture or the vendor, but that is a very specific framework of what to lock down and how to lock down, which I thought was super weird for that to be in that documentation. Development plan to implement zero trust architecture, which shall incorporate as appropriate mitigation steps to the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. That's NIST. I've probably been doing this for 20 years. And like I said, every 4 or 5 years, NIST usually picks the framework of Azure, 3 tier, 2 tier, zero trust, microservices, micro segmentation. There's so many ways to secure architecture. That's why I was super surprised when they actually kind of nailed it down to that detail of what that should be. So CISA shall modernize its current cybersecurity program, service, and capability to be a fully function with cloud environment with zero trust architecture. So once again, that's super cloud. Then they said it has to be FedRAMP and authorized management program with general service administration. So if you ever did NIST 800-53 in Prim, FedRAMP is just that in the cloud, right? So it tells you what policies and procedures the cloud vendors have to have. They all have it because they've been doing it. What type of VMs you can spin up, Windows or Linux. From a Linux side, they only really respect probably 3 or 4 distros, Red Hat and Ubuntu. And I think it was one more. I'm a Red Hat guy because that's actually been the federal space probably the longest. So once again, they're big on FedRAMP, cloud, and zero trust. So from us understanding us trying to secure the bag, that's where we need to link to. Once again, Amazon Azure, zero trust. You can do that with Cisco, of course, is the big dog in there. You can do that with Docker, containers. So there's like 3 or 4 ways to do zero trust in the cloud. Let's see. Thanks for giving me your opinion. That's why I'm modernization. Your agency is getting upgraded after 6 years, so it dies. That means it'd be 5 years for the next upgrade. Now, usually once we get upgraded 5, it'll get a 30-year run. It'll get a 30. Usually you run a system in the government probably 20-25 years. So we still got a few things on client server, so we trying to get it, upgraded into the new thing. So usually a government system, because it can cost you anywhere. I've been on a system that costs $300 million. I've done an $80 million system. So if you're spending that much money, you need to at least try to get it for 20 years. Like I said, when I was at DOD, we were trying to do general ledger for the Department of Defense, for the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. So we're trying to do a standard general ledger. So we were working on that for about 10 years. So now, Joyce, you go get your tax money. So they usually do that and ride it out. So that's usually how it works. So let's see. Enhancing software supply chain security. So from we talked about supply chain, especially coming from the oil company, is how do you lock down your supply chain? Right now is you usually created your own software. Now you buy software, or now it's even worse than that. You buy services in the cloud. If you need an HR system now, you just probably pick a vendor there in Amazon Cloud and you integrate with them, right? So if the cloud vendor gets hacked and they're hooked to your system, they can get on your network and hack you, right? So if you look at SolarWinds, that's kind of what happened. SolarWinds actually monitor your network. They got in SolarWinds network, so in their upgrade, they got put on almost every machine in the government. Why is you had their agents on to look at your logs and check the health of your system. So SolarWinds is great. It's got high marks. So if one of your servers were acting funny, SolarWinds will look at it. The health monitor will say, "Oh, we're gonna take this offline. We're gonna shut it down. We're gonna spin up another VM. We're gonna send you an email. Then you can figure out what's going on with this system." But since SolarWinds was on every machine, when it got hacked, it was all in your network, right? So that's the problem when you use third-party vendors to help you monitor your software. But of course, you're not going to write that type of software, right? There's a ton of software now that you're just going to use. HR software, finance software, manufacturing software. You're not going to write any of that stuff. You're going to just hook it in, probably from the cloud, and let it run in your network, right? Oh, that was the big fish hack, right? Shout out to FireEye. FireEye got hacked, and they actually let the Department of Homeland Security know ASAP. To be honest, I don't know if I would have done it. That could have been the death knell to them, because they were actually a top security company. So with them get hacked, that looked kind of funny, but I thought they did the right thing. Actually, I think it actually got them more business. But you're right, that SolarWinds was actually the Pearl Harbor of cybersecurity. I hate to make that analogy because people physically died in Pearl Harbor, but from the width and depth of SolarWinds, that was in everything. And to be honest, I'm worried that we haven't found all the places that SolarWinds actually hooked. And don't be mistaken, it actually opened up other back doors when they got in those systems. So when they get on your system, they increasingly by open other back doors for new hacks to come in the back door. So I don't know if we know everything. It's gonna be 10 years from now before we know the full damage of SolarWinds. So like I said, section 4, that's really what it's talking about. Let's development of commercial software lacks transparency sufficient for the flexibility for software to resist attacks, adequate controls to prevent by malicious actors, pressing need to implement more rigorous and predictable mechanisms for ensuring the product functionality, security, and intended working of that. So that's really section 4. Like I said, I'm not going to read it verbatim. So in there are some highlights: using administrative separate build environments, auditing trust relationships, using multi-factor risk-based authentication, documenting and minimizing dependencies, employing encryption for data and monitoring, employing automated tools, providing requests for purchasers. So that's the highlight of that. So once again, I'm a security analyst, and one of my jobs is to review software. So when the agencies figure out they want to buy software, we actually work with them as they're actually bidding on software, looking at the function of the software. We're going to actually look at the security of the software. Right? Okay, you want to buy this vendor, as it says, are you FedRAMP certified? Right? Are you doing encryption at rest? Are you doing TLS? What kind of encryption are you using? If you're using a database, is your database using encryption at rest, right? So before your department, company, or even country, if you're the government, you need to look at every piece of software that your company uses, right? You need to make sure that's in the procurement process. Oh, thank Joyce. I appreciate it. So ask any questions. So that's I think what the United States is trying to get to, and it's something we usually just bought software, and if it didn't have our critical information, and it'd be like, oh, there's nothing in there, right? But what we forgot is that software was on our network, so they use that to get on our network to go get the good stuff, right? So if you got a HR piece of software and you just using it as a bulletin board to shore your employees' policies, if I hack into that and that's on your network, I take over that. Then I can get to your database with the SSNs, your payroll, your check numbers, whatever you're trying to do, your corporate secrets, right? So that I think that's what United States or companies are actually coming to figure out now is we need to protect everything because it's on the network. Everything is a jumping point to get to the good stuff. So I think that's what this really um, executive order is really talking about, right? Because when you talk SolarWinds, then you just talk about the oil thing where they clicked on something, and ransomware is so easy to do, right? I'm really surprised that they play them. Um, Maybe this would be a kick in the pants for many colleges to have a stand-alone IT department. Um, I thought about that, Edwards. I just think we so enamored with um, the interconnection of the world and making everything seamlessly work through. So I think that's where we are. One of my favorite people on the internet's in the house. Person Center Cyber's in the house. We just kind of walking through the White House executive order they just put out for cybersecurity. So I was just hitting the high point. Me and her did a great video. Y'all can go look at. It's on my channel. We actually went through Zero Trust Network, and a person they actually named that into the executive order. They said you should or you shall use Zero Trust in the cloud. So they're actually naming a technology model that you have to use, which I thought was weird. I'm fortunate enough that my community college has an associate in IT. Xavier, that's funny. I'm actually a real professor at a local college, and I actually teach intro to cybersecurity and forensics, and we're actually giving associates. So I tell all my students get that associate, get a job, and have your company pay for your bachelor's. I don't want nobody leaving out with all that debt. So get that associate, get you some certifications, get you a job, and let your company pay for your bachelor's. So I think so. So I think that's a move. So a little my background. Am a college professor. I actually teach at a local college. I'm huge on local colleges. It's super cost effective. You can take a lot of those prerequisites at a much cheaper rate before you go into a 4-year college. So unless you got a scholarship or you're super brilliant, I would definitely promote local colleges. I think there's one more section. Yeah, establishing a safe cyber safety review board. Yeah, cyber, like they said, each president usually do a cybersecurity executive. This one's a little more detailed because we just had the solar winds and we just had the oil company. So I think they put a lot more detail actually in this one because it seems like the United States has just been getting hacked every week. Every day I do a video on something about we got hacked or this new technology or this new Docker. So I feel like we're getting attacked every week. So let's talk about this establishing a cyber safety review board. The Secretary of Homeland Security, in consultation with the Attorney General, shall establish a safety cyber review board. The board shall review and assess with respect to significant cyber incident, to cyber incident coordination, FCEB information system or non-federal system threat activity, vulnerability mitigation activity, and agency response. The Secretary of Homeland Security shall convene a board of following a significant cyber incident, triggering the establishment of cyber unified coordination group, at any time directed by the President acting through AFSNA, at any time the Secretary of Homeland Security deems necessary. So one thing I also do is I have a lot of jobs. It's called incident response. So what is incident response? That's actually a cybersecurity job a lot of times. You don't need to be technical. You need to be organized. So if one of our systems gets hacked, right, we would call on the incident response team, which would be the CIO, the CISO, and whatever business unit that system is in charge of, right? Would it be the best choice for IT civilian service workers on the board? Probably those Joyce question is, who would be the best choice of IT civilian servers working on that board, sir? There will be civilian people working on that system because they're going to actually tell you most of the time if that system's been hacked. Usually something's going to look funny, screen's not going to look right, or if it's some piece of work hacker, he might have some image come up and they're going to run and tell the security team something's funny, right? So when that board comes together, whatever business unit owns that system, they have to be in the room because years ago, one of the systems I worked on was hacked, but it was actually getting $300 million in the next 4 months. So even though there was a security breach on that system, I can't authorize that system to be shut down, right? Even though I'm on the security team, even though I think it's leaking information, that's a business call. That's not an IT call. That's not a security person's call. That's a business call, right? Because depending on what that machine's doing, how much money it's taking, the system might say, we need to let that system run for a month and figure that out on the back end, right? So let's say it's life or death and it was a radar system and you had so many planes using that system, right? As a security person, I'm not authorized to shut down that system. And you want to always remember, that's not your job. Your job is to give the risk to the senior management team, and they make that call. So once again, my job is to talk about security as a program. When you talk about security as a program, I'm actually relaying risk to senior management. It's their decision to figure out, are we going to shut down the system? We're going to let that system run? Or are we going to pull the plug, right? That's a senior management. My job is to give them my expertise and my knowledge of what I believe it is, and I give them my risk assessment. We losing all the data. Or they could go from this system and jump to this other system that got more critical data, right? Okay, I think they got through this way. That hole has another hole in this other system. So if they could get to all the systems, so I'm giving them the risk of what this risk is, but then too is we got to think about the totality for the whole company, right? So you got to talk about the whole risk as it relates. So when I'm talking to the CISO and the CIO, when I come to them, that's one thing is, what's the risk? How can I quantify the risk? And what is the level of the risk, right? If they just on the machine and there's no, we call it PI, personal identified information. If it's nothing on there but a couple reports, and I don't think they can get to the rest of the company, right? Right, that's a different risk as if they're stealing all our company secrets worth $1 billion. All right, so person's question is, cyber needs a model similar to behavior economics, where economics theories assume all people are rational. Behavior economics does not make that assumption. That is correct. That's correct. I guess my only pushback is that's the CIO and CISO's problem. If they're not behavior, then I'm like, And the cyber assumption is that senior managers made up of rational people, not the primary vulnerability at the management level. Not the primary vulnerability at the management level is decision making. Yes. The primary vulnerability at the management level is decision making. Yeah, but that's what they get paid to do. I'm not supposed to override them. If my whole management team is unstable, I can't fight that. I hope I'm reading that right. That's their decision. So if they make the wrong decision, I'm cool with that. right? That's why they make the big bucks, right? So if my whole management team is um, not rational and they make the wrong decision, that's on them, right? Because when you do an assessment and we get a finding, it's senior management's finding. It's not my finding. So if there's a vulnerability on the database, I tell the CIO and the president, right? Because if something happened, we get fined. It's actually the president's fine because he signs off on all government documentation, right? But don't get mistaken. If I misread it and I tell him, I'm gonna get fired too. But it's their decision. I want real people making decisions. You should just do your job. You should just do your job. True. So, but two is, if you got a good team, and I've always worked with good management, they take that stuff very seriously. Two is, if you make, especially if you're at a publicly traded company, if you make a bad cyber decision and the company loses a lot of money or the company gets sued, those guys can be personally sued. What was that? Equifax, the CIO got fired, the CEO got fired, and the CISO got fired because they got hacked and their stock went down, and they all personally got sued, right? So, not trying to scare people, I do have an umbrella policy. I'm not that high, but as a consultant, I may help people make decisions. So if they get sued, I actually ask somebody, I could be sued. The odds of that will be small, but I want to make sure I'm covered for that, right? So I just talked to my agent. She said with the odds of that, I actually got a $2 million policy super cheap. But I do have one because I'm in this business and I do give risk assessments, right? I'm always overly cautious, right? The odds of me getting sued are super small, but I am covered for that, right? And in the legal profession, this is called errors and omissions. So my umbrella. So if your lawyer make up, and I might have a lawyer on, I'm an interviewer in a couple of weeks. It's called errors and omission. I have something similar to that. So for some reason I get caught up in a class action lawsuit, I want to be covered, right? But if you look at the Equifax, Joyce says all those guys got fired because they didn't have encryption at rest, and some people thought that was negligent. So from a legal term, if you found negligent as a cyber person, that means you basically didn't do any security and you could be held liable. Probably if you're anything below a CISO, you won't get sued. The odds you get sued are super small, but I just want to make sure I have my highest odds covered, right? So once again, that's what we're talking about here. The review board, once again, that's incident response. So usually in your incident response team, you should practice. So I'm part of an incident response team. So we practice, somebody steals a laptop. If our big machine gets hacked. So the question is too, if you get hacked, who do you need to notify? I work at a government site, so we got to notify the state. We got to notify the feds. Then depending on how many, your state usually have laws. If in California, if more than 1,000 records get lost in the company, you gotta let every one of those 1,000 people know that you lost their records, right? So you might have to let the person know, the state know, and if you got a federal, like if you're working for a HIPAA or a hospital, you gotta let health and hospital know if you're doing HIPAA. And from this briefing, you probably have to let Homeland Security know in the future if it's more than 1,000 records. You probably gonna have to let Homeland Security know. So as an incident response team, you need to practice that. So if we get hacked in real life, who do we need to notify? What time limit did you need to notify? I think HIPAA gives you 30 days, right? Depending on your state, they give you a week to 60 days. But you need to know what that is, because when you get hacked, and I've been in companies where we thought we've been hacked, you don't have time to think. You try to figure out who hit you, where did it go. Am I gonna get fired? Is this my last check? A lot of stuff gonna be going through your mind. So you need to have all this stuff written down, and you need to have practice that from an incident response. And I'm gonna do an incident response later. I did one probably a year ago, but I'm gonna update that. Like from incident response, and that's what this section is talking about. Who do you need to know? What time frame do they need to know? Who owns those systems, right? So if your HR system gets hacked, who's your HR director? Do you have her phone number? I've actually been called at midnight a couple of times, right? We on a call trying to figure, okay, night crew thinks this happened. Who's in charge of that system? Can we pull it offline? What are the nightly batch jobs? Get the programming director on in charge of that system. Are there any nightly batch jobs? Can we shut it off now? Is this a busy week? No week, right? So you got to get the programmers online because they got batch jobs running on some systems. What batch jobs run? So you need a list of people that are involved with the system that you've been hacked, so y'all can start talking like CISO, CIO. Hey, you might need to call a CEO. Programmers, what you got running on that system? Who's in charge of programming? What batch jobs are on there? Right? Networking got what system is that system connected to? Right? Because they call that east and west movement. When you get hacked, they're going east and west. What systems are connected? That systems could also get hacked. Right? So you need to have all that documentation, all that stuff, so you can figure it out. Because if you got to figure it out on the fly, you ain't gonna never make it. Okay, good. That should let them know. That's from person. Joyce, talk about a laptop. What would have been Nancy's and why is this such a big deal? I'm gonna leave that one alone. It's nuts that people are instantly fired when hacks occur. That's like firing executive life insurance people. No, that is true, but no, you're right. There's good things about a lot of times if you word your resume right, they'll pick you up because when you're in a hack, especially a very large hack, you learn a super lot of information. The one thing I learned that I actually brought with me from DOD is you're going to talk to a lot of lawyers because the lawyers are figuring it out, okay, what is state requirements for that? What is the federal requirements for that? What is our legal responsibility to the media? Right? Depending on that, how big you are and how big your agency is, your CEO might have to go in front of the media, right? Because they don't want to get fired, so they're trying to get in front of that, right? So there's a lot of things you have to walk through, right? So when we do our incident response practice, we process everything from calling the government, calling the media, like I said, calling the business owner of that system, calling the programmers who know what programs are running on that system. Hopefully you have that all in your GRC. GRC stands for Government Risk Compliance Program. Hopefully you can look that system up and all the information will be in there. Unless you're a very mature system, a very mature company, you're not going to have that stuff in the system. So you're going to be scrambling. So at least you need to know who you need to call and make that happen. Okay, this is Jim's system. We got his number. This is the head developer. We can call him and figure out what batch jobs on there, what systems is connected to. If we lost data, is there a state requirement, a federal requirement, or a media requirement, right? Then two, from a legal perspective, if it's more than 1,000, do we have to give them credit monitoring? So all that stuff should be figured out ahead of time, right? So I think that's what, well, I don't think, I know that's what this section is talking about here when you talk about notifying it. So the six, standardizing the federal government playbook for responding to cybersecurity vulnerabilities and incidents. The cybersecurity vulnerability incident response currently identifies, remediate, recover. That's kind of what we were going into. I think that's the additional. The playbook is just have you practicing them like we just talked about. How would you run through that? Hindering ability to lead agencies analyze vulnerability. Standardized response process ensure. So yeah, that's what we were just talking about. So if you go, and we're going to talk about that in another bit. MITRE attack, it's actually a way to actually look through logs, and MITRE's actually went through and examined how a lot of these attacks happen and how they look through your logs. So the playbook would be what's in your logs to figure out actually what's happening inside your system. And we're going to talk about that. It's called MITRE attack, and they're actually, I call them the STIGs of looking at logs. So we're actually going to do a video on that. So let me check. It's nuts. People are thank you for going over this. No problem, Ricky. Thanks for coming. It was poor risk management. Cyber, you're 100% right. Most companies, and even most large companies, have very poor risk management. I think everybody's into the nuts and bolts. Let's look at the individual system. But we talked about that because we actually, went live together. That's when you're talking about a cyber program, right? Let's talk about risk from a cyber level. We still talking about vulnerabilities and where is this hole coming from, right? We're not talking about the holistic of the company. Joyce says, interesting. I'm discovering organization, especially fair practice cyber security, cyber compliance versus cyber security. Yeah, that's what I actually do. More compliance for a living. Like I said, I've done FISMA, DOD, little IRS, and a little HIPAA. All that's compliance at definitely a higher level. Definitely true. The two are not the same. We can't comply our way through security. Stop. No, keep commenting, person. I love when you comment. I like to give it back and forth. But no, that's something we need to talk about in the future. Compliance versus security, right? Security to me is what is this check on this machine? Compliance is at a higher level. What am I complying to? Am I PCI? Am I DOD? But the problem is, as a company, you got to figure out your standards so you can figure out what your compliance in, right? Are you NIST? Are you ISO? Are you OSHA? Are you Pub 1075, which reports to the IRS? HIPAA, like I said, I've done on my PCI. So there's a ton of compliance in it. You got to pick one so we know which one you're implementing. What's up, Todd? Welcome. Joyce, are you raising your hand or are you telling me hi? Just start typing in there, Joyce. I'll answer it and figure it out. Let's go on the fly. So let's say improving detection of cybersecurity vulnerabilities and incidents on a federal level. The federal government should employ our appropriate resource authority to maximize early detection of vulnerabilities and incidents. The approach shall include increasingly the federal government visibility into detection of cybersecurity vulnerabilities and threats to agency networks in order to bolster the federal government's cybersecurity efforts. That sounds cool. The real problem with that is most agencies or small companies I talk to, you got to have your logging especially good to figure out, to detect what's happening on your network. If you're not doing a proper logging, you will never figure out improving the detection of vulnerabilities and incidents. And two, the other part about logging is depending on the velocity of your system. When I worked at DOD, we were doing 1 billion transactions a night. Do you know how much logs that is? Then on top of that is you got to save those logs for 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years. Do you have enough space to do that? And that space costs, right? So when you say improving the detection of cybersecurity vulnerabilities and incidents for a federal government network, and we talk about logs, we talk about everything. Application logs, web application logs, database logs, OS logs, Juniper logs, load balancer logs, VPC logs. If you got 3 firewalls because you got a protected zone, a flat network, and your outer network you got in segments, you need logs from all those devices, right? And each one of those logs come out in different formats. So now you need a SIM to standardize all that. SIMs are very expensive, right? So when you say that statement, I'm going to read it again. The federal government should employ all appropriate resources, authorize maximum early detection of cybersecurity vulnerabilities and incidents on your network. So that means you need to be logging everything. That's a big deal. And all the SIMs I know are expensive. So how are you doing that? And two is how long are you keeping those logs? So like I said, you could put them on an order, but like I said, when you take that order and actually put it in real life, what does that actually mean? People do just enough to get by. This was called snobbiness and cause holes. Most definitely. But I always say, tied to that, I don't call them sloppy. I call it baby steps. A lot of companies don't have a lot of money. Even if you have the money, do you have the expertise on staff to actually make that happen? Because if you're talking about app server, web server, load balancer, you need that expertise to control all that. And most of those guys are just trying to do their base job. That's why security is the next level. If you talk to a web admin, most of those guys don't really know what security is. They're installing servers, they installing web servers, they putting load balancers up, they helping people with HTTP, they doing multiple virtual URLs to control the website. They're taking developers' codes and putting them in there. They have a big job by themselves. So then when I come in and tell them you need to stig that, they're rolling their eyes and they're mad at me, right? Because now we got to test it, right? So that's the part about putting security on their day-to-day jobs. That's a different level, right? I know some killer Linux people, but they really don't understand security at a federal level, right? I did a video. There was 302 checks to put on a Linux box, right? To actually lock it down, right? That's 302 things you need to test to make sure you didn't break some. That's on top of your regular job, right? So most people don't know that next level security, but security is pervasive through all those departments. When I hear mention of Amazon and Microsoft, two huge monopoly companies in the United States government working in their cloud, it seems like we're sleeping in the same bed as private companies and they have control of our networks. Yes and no, Joyce. Both of those companies, because they were trying to get federal work, they actually have FedRAMP cloud where only federal agencies will be in those clouds. So if you're at a certain level in DoD, there's only going to be government DoD agencies within that cloud data center. The other part of that is that data center and all everything in there, super expensive. There's something called FIPS 140-2, which is government encryption, meaning that product like Cisco had to send their encryption to the government to sign off. For the government to do that is $100,000. So you're sleeping in the bed, but it's with other government agencies that have some kind of security compliance. So you can look that up. Just look up government cloud. Like I said, all of them has one. Google has one. Amazon has one. And Google, Amazon, and Azure have one. Because they all want their government money. So they're actually data centers with only government customers in it. My next video will be on truthfully defining a vulnerability. The way we define a response is very narrow, which limits our ability to make more. Oh, I agree with that, and I'm really bad about that person. That'll be a good video. I'm so government trained now. I'm focusing. You're right, but my version of vulnerability is super narrow because when I talk to government people, I am super narrow about that. So that will be a good video. So. I am government trained, so you're right. My version is DoD approved, though. That's why it's DoD approved. My version is DoD approved. But you're right, and I think we need to, and I think you're doing a great job. Everybody go out there and subscribe to Person Center. She has a cyber channel. She's actually thinking a little differently. She actually got me thinking a little differently. Shout out to her. I'm government trained, so I move at a certain way, and I'm an old dog. She's trying to give me some new tricks, so I'm thinking about things a little differently. So shout out everybody. Go check out her channel. It seems like we're asleep. Okay, yep. But yeah, Joyce, go check out there. There's and I did a video. There's government clouds out there that they both own where DoD's not next to Joe's Crab Shack or Joe's Barbecue Shack. So no, so you're in a government data center only with government customers. So everybody in there is reporting to somebody. So we believe the security on that. Because sometimes you got to remember is you on a VM. So you're actually sharing a VM with other clients. So if their part of the VM get hacked, they could actually get through the root VM and to get to your VM on that same, right? It's one physical box with multiple VMs. So if I get my VM hacked, theoretically the hacker or the my boss calls it, the bad actor could actually get from my VM to your VM, right? Because we're on the same virtual box. So that's why we want everybody on our VM to have government requirements, right? So they're actually doing some level of security. I think that was the last section. Oh no, we got one. Improving the federal investigation and remediation capability. So when we find some, how quickly can we fix it? How quickly can we identify it? And two, like SolarWinds, that actually was a nation state. So how do we get that out to many users and many companies to make sure we all secure? So let's read a couple paragraphs there. We're not going to read much. Information from the network and system logs, we talked about that. Federal system from both on-prem and system connection to third party is invaluable for, we talked about that. Investigation and remediation is essential that agencies and IT services provide collectors of that. So we talked about the logs. What did that mean? how long we keep them. But see, I think it's a little bigger than that because we talking about logs for everybody that's attached to that company. SolarWinds, what? I mean, it was what 200 companies they thought got hacked that was on their customer list that was government clients. So how do you do that for their whole ecosystem, right? Because you said improving government investigation and remediation capabilities. So when you're talking from a government perspective, you're talking about remediation of the whole ecosystem, meaning whatever companies use that software, when that patch come out, how does all those companies get fixed? Or if you're the government and 20 of your top agencies got hacked, FBI, NSA, OSHA, FERPA, how do you make sure all those agencies in the ecosystem get patched very quickly so we can make sure we at a baseline and we secure as a nation, right? What you know, well, you know your compliance. Well, yep, I know compliance, and like I said, you as a company has to pick what your compliance is. Most companies don't even realize they're PCI. The government has PCI compliance for using a credit card. So what does that look like for your company? All right. But who enforces it? The government doesn't enforce it. MasterCard and Visa forced it. A friend of mine had a restaurant and his friend put in his network. He got hacked and Visa told him he couldn't process credit cards until he paid $25,000 for a forensic investigation. Right, so he couldn't do credit cards, right? So Visa forced his restaurant to be compliant with PCI, right? So when the government says you got to be in compliance, who's going to enforce it, right? So for these critical infrastructures, right? We know the company's gonna come out and look at the oil pipeline, but who's gonna come out and look at your company's computer system, right? So we're gonna put that in scope now. So I think that's kind of what the government's trying to figure out, right? So if I put this compliance out there, who's going to enforce it? Visa and MasterCard says, hey, your customers got hacked. So they got these charges. We had to refund their money. So Visa's like, hey, you got to do this before we let you run credit cards. Who's going to do that for the oil company, right? Because when I read the article, the government says they're the first line of cyber security for their company. So who's got oversight over that? Right, DOD reports to OMB and FISMA. So FISMA is the Federal Management Association. So they will come out every 4 or 5 years and run an assessment of our systems. We were responsible for them, but we know we had a physical audit. So who's going to go out and do physical audits for all these compliances they say in this order? Who's going to do that? I mean, it sounds good, but who's going to physically go out and say we're good? Obviously, we can't trust the companies. They be getting hacked every week. So who's going to be responsible for that? So that's the part, because I've been in this game for so long, that's the part's missing. You tell this company, oh, you got to be NIST, and you got to be FedRAMP. And even if you do it in the cloud, who's going to go out and take your part of the VPC, which is your VM, and who's going to run your scans? Who's going to do the physical audit of that? Right? So that's the question. Right? That's the question, Joyce. I think right now, they think, well, he's putting it in the lap of the companies. Right? So what they're saying is, you do business with the government, you are our vendor, this is what you need to do, but nobody come. If I know you're never going to come check on me, I'm not going to do it. Right? So the question is, the oil company, are they going to get fined because they got hacked? I don't think so. So if we don't fine them, are they going to ever make any changes? And I just looked, there was an article 3 years ago. They had a cybersecurity review 3 years ago, and they did horrible in it. So it looked like they didn't fix anything that came from their review earlier. All right, so that's the part I'm trying to. I reached out to a few people, and they were like, they thought I was right. They were like, I don't know who's going to come out and review that. So Section 9, National Security System. The Secretary of Defense acting the national manager, coordination with the Director of National Intelligence and Consulting shall adopt the national security system requirements that are equivalent to exceed the cybersecurity requirements set forth in this order and otherwise not applicable to the national security. Such requirements may provide exception in circumstances necessitated by unique mission needs. So basically, is if you're mission critical and you don't meet these requirements, we'll give you a pass and we'll come visit you later. Right. So I think that was the last this definitions. So yeah, so that's the whole executive order. So from a whole, like we talked about, this is a cybersecurity program, and these are things that the United States is trying to tell companies and agencies: let's use zero trust. Let's make sure you're logging. Who's going to review it? Let's use policies and procedure. Oh, the cloud vendors are good. They got 1,000 security people. Let's push this off on Amazon, Azure, and Google. So put it up there, right? So if your VM has a vulnerability, I had a VM on Amazon and I forgot to patch it. They actually sent me an email. They gave me 30 days to patch it or they won't shut down my VM. I was clapping. I was very impressed. I was like, "Ooh, this is pretty good, right?" So I think they think, which I think they will. The cloud vendors are going to help a lot of companies, right? Because they're going to look. They don't want things insecure on their network, so they're going to send you an email and kind of assist you. So I think that's one of the things the government is actually applying on and making sure to try to help companies. Long story short, I think this is a boom for cybersecurity. That puts cybersecurity at the forefront again. Obviously, it's a hot job market. Obviously, there's some crazy amount of open cybersecurity jobs, about 400 or 500. Two is, and I tell people, cybersecurity is so broad. I'm gonna bring on. She's a lovely lady. She's actually the compliance manager. Her job is to, like we talked about, what vulnerabilities are there, send them to the reporting agency, figure out where we're at. So she has 2,000 or 3,000 vulnerabilities. She just gives out orders telling people what to fix and let her know if it's fixed, right? So there's a lot of non-technical jobs in cybersecurity that make a lot of money that I think a lot of people don't know about. So she's actually on my interview schedule. They see the monetary and reputational benefits, oh, definitely, of security too. I'm referring to AWS and other. Oh, definitely. She said they see monetary and reputational benefits for security too. I'm referring to AWS and other vendors. I used to think reputational person, but I think we just get hacked so much. I don't think there's a penalty if you get hacked anymore. I think you get your credit monitoring and we'll forgive you. I don't think there's very little reputational risk. I've been hacked so much. I've got credit monitoring, and I still do business with those big companies that got me hacked, to be honest. Now I don't do a lot online because I'm an old curmudgeon, but I don't think there's a penalty as far as reputational risk for getting hacked anymore. If it is, I think it's super low. So to me, this is fun and confusing part of cyber. So many paths and search to choose. No, that's right, Xavier. You just got to figure out what works for you and what you're good at. Like I said, I started out as a programmer before cybersecurity got hot. So I just kind of flowed into this area and it just kind of ended up here, actually, kind of as an accident. And I'm just getting, welcome to the community, Xavier. There's a ton of people. Person Center Cyber's in the house. Kenny Conjo's at the house. There's a lot of people you can subscribe to. Tech G, Networking Guy, Network Bruh. There's a ton of people in this space. If you lean into a certain area, just let me know. Xavier and I'll point you to some guys and kind of get you headed in the right direction, man, from my point of view. Like I said, welcome, and I want to welcome everybody to cybersecurity. There's enough room for everybody. I think everybody can be great, and everybody will get great. Let's get the bag. I'm chunky, and I like to eat, Xavier. So let's get this money, man. I'm going to go have a nice dinner. I'm going to have a nice filet, high-end vodka, and I'm going to live a great life, Xavier. Let's go get this bag, man. So welcome to cybersecurity, and let me know what part you want to get into. And if it's not my part, I can direct you to some great guys, and we're going to get you sent in the right direction, man. There's room for everybody. There's 400,000 or 500,000 jobs. I consider myself the OG in my area because I'm 50 years old, And my job is to help you, Xavier. That's why I came to the internet, man. Hey, let me know, man. Let me know. Go visit everybody. Go to networking. I'm compliance. Person centered cyber is going to give you some cyber skills with some personal skills. So yeah, go see Network Bruh, go see Dewan, go see Tech G, Xavier. There's a ton of people, man. Windows Shop. And two, a lot of times is just take the toy out and play with it, man. If you don't like that toy, you can go from networking to database admin. I've been a database admin, web admin, administration. I did management. I hated management. But yeah, Xavier, play with all the toys, man. The more toys you play with, the more experience you play with. And I like to put all the toys together, Xavier, and make Voltron. That's before your time. I'm old. You put all the toys together, you can make one big toy, man. What's up, Dave Dub? Salute. Welcome to the party, man. So that's the Biden. I'm gonna put the link in the description. Straight. I don't get out enough. Person Center Cyber says shout out to the policy writers, which I should never forget. I work in federal. You can't do anything without a policy. I'm usually the NIST 20 policies. Every check you put on a machine rolls up to a policy. And I'm very crappy at policy writing. They don't let me do it, so shout out to them. I'm not very good at policy writing. I do have a ton of templates though that I use when I make my side money, but shout out to policy writing. It's definitely an art, not a science, and I'm not very good at it. But yeah, especially in the federal space, there's a ton of policies in there. Shout out. So yeah, if you want to get in that policy world, and that's actually a good way to get into cyber, because a lot of people don't like to do it. So shout out Person Center Cyber. She's got a Patreon, a couple dollars. She can definitely get you started and heading in the right direction, man. Thank you very much for the info. I'm a Lego Transformer guy. Okay, so I see you, man. So like I said, I've been a little background. I've been a web admin. I programmed for 15 years. Database admin. I've done everything professionally except networking. I've done everything except networking, and I work with a ton of network guys. Why is Infosec Management bad? It's not bad. What happened is you got to remember the internet came from DARPA. It was meant to share information. Security wasn't even a thought. DARPA was done to make colleges, universities share it. Then they were going to keep it hidden on the dark web so the military can share. So security really wasn't thought of, to be honest. So then when people start putting in businesses on there and start taking credit cards, we were always behind. So as you add functionality, people don't think about security until the functionality makes money, Dave. So by the time we figure out the functionality is making money, security's behind. So when Facebook was first created, it was horrible for security because he did it in his dorm room, right? And they did it to meet rating girls in college. Then once they figured out after 6 or 7 years how to make money, then they was like, oh, we're going to need to secure, right? So a lot of times, Dave W., security's thought of at the end of the project. Now we get better now by putting it in the front, but the first 50 years of IT, especially when you talk about the web, security was an afterthought. I want to start on creating my own cybersecurity company. You can do that, but that's a big statement when you say your own. Like we talked about, are you doing policies, procedures? Are you doing federal? Are you doing private? Are you doing cloud? Are you doing Ty? There's a ton of stuff you can do in security. What was you programming in, Xavier? What language was you using? Oh, you want to be coder? I probably Xavier. Most people don't want to code, and I don't blame them. I coded for 20 years. IDEs are so much better. When I start coding in COBOL, you could be looking at something for 3 hours, and it would be a semicolon at the end of a line. So no, to be a coder, it's a special person. That doesn't mean that person is smart. That doesn't mean he's great. Just a different type of person. So you got to be unique. So. Shout out, okay. Person Center Cyber is pumping Ty up. I'm trying to scare him. She's pumping him up. Shout out to Person Center Cyber. And I agree with her. Don't be scared. Don't. I'm not trying to scare you. I just want to let you know what you're getting into. vulnerability scan and penetration. She ain't gonna like that, man. There's more than just hacking time, man. We gotta do bigger things than that. But go see my man Alpha Cyber Center. Kenny Conjo's at the top. There's a ton of hackers out there, man. I'm not gonna call it penetration. I call them red team. I work with a few red teams. Um, At a certain thing, person-centered cyber. She said coders and programmers rule the world. The reason they rule the world is that's the product now. So when you think of Facebook, that's just code. You think of Google, people don't realize that's just code in the back end optimized to find what you need to find and give you the best ad, right? So that's why coders rule the world, because most big products, Snapchat, oh, that's code. So that's why coders and programmers rule the world is it's just code. When you talk about those big companies, Oracle, Google, Microsoft, it's just code. That's what their product is. So you're talking about five of the big probably companies in the United States are software companies. Right, and that's something cool about that is too, and I that's one thing I do miss about code. You build something, you see it to work, and that's all you need is a laptop. You throw a database laptop and start coding. It's really your imagination. The crazy thing is, I'm so old. If somebody told me Snapchat would be $1 billion company with dog ears, I would have told them they're crazy. So I can't even pick $1 billion company. Because Snapchat with dog ears, I would have been like, that's the stupidest thing I ever seen in my life. Why would anybody want to do dog ears? And I see that all over Snapchat, and they done spun it off with their, their little, I'm calling them ebooks with the commercials and stuff in them. So codings do rule the world. Those are, big things. So, but code, you need VMs, you need web admins, you need database admins, but all that's still code too. I see no wonder why my job has adopted the zero. Oh, I think it should be adopted everywhere. Yeah, but that's a big zero trust is a framework, right? Me in person, we went live. You can do that with containers. You can do that with Docker. You can do that with Windows firewalls, with IP tables. You can do it with Cisco. There's a zero trust product. So Dave W., there's a ton of ways to do a zero trust network or zero trust architecture. So there are very few hackers and hundreds of thousands of opportunities to use what someone else has done to this work. Oh, that's true. That's true. So cybersecurity, there are very few hackers and hundreds of thousands of opportunists who use what someone else has done to just disrupt work in everyday life. No, that's true. Like some of them are script kiddies. It's different levels to that. There's script kiddies, nation states, mafias. Then there's, like you said, nation states, right? So there's different levels to the hacking game, right? What could cause you a problem? So, anybody got any more questions? I just want to come online. That was just kind of jumping in my mind. So I was like, I don't go live much. I'm going to start doing that more and more. I seem like y'all enjoyed it, and I actually enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to wrap up unless anybody got any more questions for me. So I want to thank, what's up? I'm wrapping it up, man. Go back and look at my live stream. Thanks, person. I'm always jumping on. I'm going to do this more and more. And, of course, we're going to do some more duos. I like when we're talking virtually. And to anybody, when I do something, if y'all want to jump on live, just let me know. I'm going to start, bringing a panel up and we talk live and start dissecting stuff in the live. I'm actually going to start spinning stuff in AWS. I'm going to start doing that in June. I'm getting my lab ready. Shout out to Lab Every Day, Dewan. So I'm old. I got to get my lab game up. So I'm appreciating the live. Thanks for taking time. Oh, no problem. That's what I want to do. I'm glad y'all joining me. Too in the comments. Comment in the video. If you want me to go over something special, just let me know. Okay, how can I start my business with little capital? If you go out, Todd, go out to Amazon. They have a developer portion in each one of their things. So you can actually start your networking. You can spin up VMs and stuff a year for free in Amazon to kind of get you started. Two is, did you say which part penetration? I will reach out to Alpha Cyber. There's a ton of books. You can actually get a couple of those publishers. You can actually pay $20 a month and you get unlimited books to figure out what you want to specialize in. Then I would get on Udemy, go through my man Alpha Cyber, hit a couple of his affiliate links, get you a couple classes in the Udemy, and get at it, man. You can start. I actually had two companies; they both failed, but I started them with a laptop. I failed because some of my partners wasn't on the same page as mine. But with a laptop, I was writing developments. And two, if you want to do penetration testing, once you get decent time, go out to Upworks. You can actually bid on work out there, and it's so you can actually bid on work. It's small, like 20, 30 days assignment. You could probably make a couple thousand and start getting customers once you get to a certain level. So once again, I would get the developer VMs on AWS. That'll get you started. Get you a couple subscriptions, and I'll put them in the comment box. Or just hit me up. Go to my community tab and hit my email, ProfessorBlackOps at Gmail. There's a couple publishers out there. Once again, you pay like $20, $30 a month, and you get your unlimited books. And just get at it, man. Nothing can stop you. I want to talk about privacy and the ideas that we still on the. Oh, I agree with that. Me and Keep It Techie, we talked about privacy. That is true. Privacy, but the problem with privacy is we give it away for free. When you sign up for Facebook, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. One of my students said that. I had to give him an A for that. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So when you don't pay for those products, Snapchat, you give your privacy away for free. Right? So especially the younger kids, they don't care. They tell you where they go, who they with, who the side chick is, who they cheating on, where they check in. So I don't think there's privacy anymore, person. I mean, I'm older than you, but there's the young people. They don't care. They do not care. I appreciate it, Xavier. I'm gonna do a lot more. So look for them. I'm gonna pick a day where I start coming regularly. Like I said, I'm working on my Go Live game. So check out my videos. Please subscribe. I usually do a cyber news video every day. So go check them out. I got a ton of them. So, person, that's my only issue with that. My age, I think the government's watching me, but young people, once again, people don't know I teach at a local college, and everybody over 40 cares about. People over 40 care about cyber privacy. People under, it's weird, they care about certain privacy under 20, but as far as signing up for services and just checking in, they don't. Under 30, they just think it's what they do. Oh, I do. I do have a Cash App, but I'm good right now. I'm gonna start posting it. Like I said, I came here to just give my knowledge away. Y'all pay me by joining my lives and watching my videos. I just happen to. I'm just super blessed for what I do. That's true. That's true. That's true. That's true. So, but once again, I want to thank everybody for joining me, and I'm gonna do this a lot more. Oh, that's cool, Ty. You over 40? I'm 53, man. So I got you by a decade. So let me know what I can help you with, man. Like I said, there's a lot of people on here. I don't. I'm with you, Xavier. I'm super, but you're a rare breed, Xavier. You rare breed, man. Everybody else loves Zoom. They on Facebook. People posting funerals and they fighting with their relatives on Facebook. Facebook is just a mess, man. We do too much on Facebook when we go live. I'm just gonna put it like that, man. I'm gonna put it like that. But I'm about to go get me a little snack, everybody. I'm gonna check out. Once again, check out my videos. Please subscribe. Check out Person Centered Cyber. She's part of the clique. Once again, like I said, if you facts, Dave, pure entertainment. And two, in the comment section of this video, if you want me to talk about something specifically, of course, me and Cyber definitely gonna chop it up about privacy. We probably do another joint video and chop it up about privacy. I'm 42. I still got you by a decade, Ty. I'm gonna be 53 this year, man. So I'm trying to get it together. I just been eating through the pandemic, man. I got to get back in shape. This pandemic done got me messed up, man. I got to get it going in the right direction again. But once again, I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate that. This is Professor Black Ops, Cybersecurity for the People. Once again, just put in a comment or shoot me an email if you want me to talk about a certain video. Once again, I've been in this game for 20 years, specifically in cybersecurity. I've been everything else probably for 10 years before that. So let me know. Like I said, since they had zero trust in there, I'm gonna talk about zero trust using Docker containers as an implementation for that, and we'll talk about that in a later live. Once again, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. Professor Black Ops, Cybersecurity for the People. Have a great weekend.